What up, good people? Friday evening greetings to you. It's the third Friday in January, and we are here for another episode of Water for the Thirsty, the word simply, the word refreshing. With us tonight, we have Courtney, Jerry, and Sharika. I expect Kamek will be with us soon, as along with Cliff, who should be here in a bit as well. Uh, Everybody's doing good. All right,
Yes,
Jerry,
sir.
can we do a mic check right quick? Nah, we still don't have anything from you. All right, cool. No worries. Just checking. Should you bring anything for me to eat?
I got some Panera chips. I ain't gonna hold you.
Uh,
Nah, you good. I had dinner a little while ago because I had to make sure I be nourished for these conversations that Courtney didn't want to be having with me. It's drain all my energy sometimes, and if I'm not properly, you know,
yeah.
uh,
hmm
fed, I get weak afterwards.
Nice, nice.
But yeah, for real, Courtney, what you have for me today?
Uh, I guess it was. I can see how this could tie into what we may talk about a little bit later, but it was just a small piece from Proverbs reading. It was actually chapter 3, so I guess that was could have been from the last time, but it just came back to me again. Proverbs 3:7, and it wasn't nothing deeply philosophical about it for me per se, but just mulling it over, and I guess it was one of those look in the mirror type situations for me. Um, so the verse says, me, I don't know what version I'm going to read, but
The one that moved you.
all right. So be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. And for me, God, it's better to trust God than trust ourselves.
Hmm.
And so I'm just thinking, why are simple commands like often the hardest? Because it seems pretty simple, right? But just trying to figure that out. Like, what is it about me and my humanity that I think I know better than God? Um, and ruminating on it, I'm just like, I might not say it out loud, but the way I live my life, it's like in many times I show that I trust myself more than I trust God. Um, you know, uh, so in a way, it's like, how do you following in the verse? It's like fear the Lord, depart from evil. Um, it's how do I trust that His word will guide me? Um, how do I turn away from the thoughts that I know what's best for me?
How do you turn away from those thoughts?
Yeah, like I mean, I would think your thoughts would probably lead you to um, think that you know what you should do in a given situation. Uh, you know, maybe how to react to a situation. Um, so I feel like it has to start with a thought.
Hmm. You know what comes to mind when you talk about this? You know the movies where um there's a lot of stories like this where this is all the same story where there's this king or this leader of this group of people who instituted a certain set of rules and then have a son who just come up and don't understand the history behind what's going on and always want to push the envelope and say the father don't know what you talk about, we could do this, we could do that, and then they go over there and get in trouble and the fathers had to come and rescue them
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because they just don't know.
Yeah.
And what they do know, they challenge the idea until they go and they get the experience that the father had, and then they go, oh, so that's why he said that. I probably would have done well to just trust him rather than, think I know better than him, or think he's just being an old fogey, or think he's just being a, overprotective or overcautious, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's the same. I mean, you've seen that story in plenty different movies, but the same story plays out, right? Where the son challenges the father's wisdom, and maybe sometimes the authority figure may go too far, right? And may go to the extreme. But his reason for going to the extreme remained valid even after he acknowledged, maybe I've gone too far with this, and maybe I could have dealt with it better, but the reason is still valid. So
yeah,
I say with that story in mind, does that even touch on answering your question?
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Being that God is all knowing in a sense, and He knows the beginning and the end. So yeah, it would make sense. Okay, if He gives you a general command, uh, or like I said, maybe if it's not expressly directly from God, if there are some elders that are present that are there teaching and passing experience, or wisdom through experience, lived experience, maybe we should trust that. But I mean, I know for myself, I haven't always done that. I haven't always like I'll just go ahead and follow through with the experienced folks from that running this race ahead of me have shared with me. Like you said, sometimes you do feel like you it's not that serious, or it's not. Come on, like.
So I think personally what it is trust issues.
Yeah.
Between you and the individual, whichever individual, and I didn't say in this case it would be God, but whatever individual. And sometimes they are justified. Sometimes they're justified. I don't know if they're justified with God, but essentially, so don't eat that, because in the day of you eat of it, you shall surely die.
Right.
Yeah, the death came maybe 900 years later, but it was necessary.
Yeah.
Because of that thing that you did, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and from the time that you did that, like, death was inevitable. Like, what else is there for me to do now?
Yeah. Yeah. True.
You went from eating fruit to all evil every day, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it was painful for everybody. You didn't see that coming. You just thought, I eat this fruit, I'll be okay.
Right.
What kind of Pandora box it just opened?
True. And from the serpent standpoint, it's like, oh yeah, there's something missing from your current experience that you could have if you just take this next step here. So there was that wonderment of, am I missing something? It's like, is there something a little bit better, or
I feel like as we I think you'd have to know what is considered evil.
Okay.
Or change the definition, or have a more consistent definition,
or have a baseline, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think culturally we like to rank good and what we consider evil. And so it's like, well, if I'm not killing, I'm straight. Like, if I'm not, whatever we want to make up, I'm straight. Versus evil in so many ways is just not doing what you're supposed to do in a personal relationship with God.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I think that's where it gets tricky when you move from Mosaic, salvific, all those laws. And it's simply, I asked you not to go down that street. Right?
Right.
This really had nothing to do with whether or not you were saved or not saved. I just asked you not to go down that street.
I told you not to eat that fruit. Eating fruit is not evil inherently.
Right, and it's not evil. Eating the fruit's not evil. I just asked you not to do it.
Well, eating the fruit is evil Eating the fruit is evil. Eating fruit is not.
Right. Yeah. Right. And we'll probably stop there, right? It was like, well, eating fruit is not evil, like.
But eating the fruit is.
Right.
Or you eating the fruit.
Right.
Or you eating the fruit is.
Henry can eat it. Everybody else, I asked you not to do it.
I asked you not to go buy dinner by that man there, so you'll be eaten by a lion by the side of the road. Well, you won't be eaten, you'll be killed by a lion. The lion ain't gonna eat you, and he ain't gonna attack the donkey either.
And I think this is something that we have to keep at the forefront throughout your Christian relationship, right? Like, what's the evil that you're always resisting or turning to that you've been told to turn away from? And how do you recognize it? Because it's in so many ways, evil is simply just a form of selfishness.
I would say evil is verse 7, wisdom in your own eyes.
Selfishness. Self-serving, right? It's really, you know me, I hate giving Lucifer more credit than he needs to. It's really just you doing what you feel like doing.
And him baiting you into it.
And sometimes he gets astray because you don't want to admit that he had nothing.
He had nothing to do with it. It was all you.
I was gonna do this anyway.
The longer I go through this life, the less I realize it's Satan baiting me. I think it's more. It might be more me.
Right. I just want to do it. I just want to do it.
I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think we can get a lot further if a lot of us would be like, you know what? That's my favorite sin. Let me stop playing.
Yeah. Right. I would like to go in the context of this verse. Sometimes it's I enjoy it, and then sometimes it's I don't want to have to deal with that. So it's not necessarily something I enjoy. It's I don't want the consequences of doing the right thing. Right. So I don't want to have to get up and put on clothes.
The consequences of doing the right thing.
Yes. I don't want to get up and go to the gym and then have to suffer the burn in my muscles afterwards. I don't want to do that today. I don't want to get up and drive in the cold. I don't want to do that. I don't like all that's involved with going to the gym. Going to the gym is the right thing for me to do this morning. I don't want to have to deal with that.
Do people look at things like that?
Well, let's go to
I don't know if I think through.
Let's go to James.
I don't know if I think through things like that.
So let's go to.
For instance, I haven't been to the gym in like a month, and Jewel reminded me of it.
Lashes.
How did she? How? What was the reminder?
You don't get your fat
lashes.
Bleep. No, she doesn't do that.
Right.
To the gym. And it wasn't the cold. It wasn't. I feel like
right. Whatever the barrier is. In my case, is right now it's cold. I have to drive and go somewhere. I had to layer up to get outside to sit in the cold car, wait on the car to walk. That's a whole lot of preparation to be able to go and do this thing. And I had to drive 15 minutes.
Is that a deterrent? Like the getting dressed warmly?
Oh, heck yeah.
When it's 4 o'clock in the morning, because if I don't go at 4 o'clock in the morning, I don't have any other time to go in the day, right? So I have to do it then. So depending on what happened the night before, I want to stay and sleep all the way till 6 o'clock when I had to get up and get the children ready for school.
But you had exercise the night before. Oh, we're not talking about. Okay, no.
What happened the night before? I was doing other things, children homework, just whatever else.
Yeah, I got you.
This is the time where it could happen if I'm going to make it happen. But in the middle of the winter,
it's hard to get up in the morning. In the winter,
it's 18 degrees outside.
That warm bed be like,
stay with dark and the sleep heavy and it kind of sitting on you like a blanket all in your eyes, and you're like, is there another point in the day where I could do this where it's warmer and I'll have a little bit more enthusiasm and better circumstance?
Yeah, but Jared, the thing is, even if it was warm on a different part of the day, you would find another reason to not do it at that time.
Maybe
it was too warm. I think our biggest challenge is, This is why
Right out
God
there.
always refers to us as children, because I
So I'd
think
just say,
fundamentally we could be 50, 60, 70, and we still behave and think like children. And a child essentially, I want what I want when I want, based on what I feel like in a moment. And it's like, because it's like, you tell your kid, don't put your hand by the hot stove. Why? Don't go, standing on the edge of the pool. Why? Our vision as kids is very, I think they said kids only think 9 minutes into the future. That's the furthest ahead that they see, right? And I think for most of us as adults, it's like, if this isn't going to be punitive in the next 9 minutes, I'm good. I'm doing it.
Mine might be 9.5.
Well,
but no, you're right, Jerry. The issue is what I want, and I would say it's what I don't want. And it's not always a pleasure. Sometimes it's the avoidance of discomfort.
Yeah.
Avoidance of discipline. Just discipline. I don't feel like being disciplined right now.
Yeah. Because, like Jared said, this discomfort, that. Yeah. I have to stick to this diet. I have to stick to this routine. Why?
Yeah.
If I stand up for this, I could end up in a blazing fiery furnace if I do this, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to put myself at risk of having to be in a blazing fiery furnace or in a lion's den. Who wants that?
Or hung upside down, or sawn in half, or boiled in oil, or whatever.
Lose my job,
Or comfortable.
So like James 1:2 says, my brothers and sisters, you will face all kind of trouble. When you do, think of it as pure joy. The word trouble there is a trial. It's a testing or a temptation. It's either trial or temptation. The word means both. So you have different types of testing. You have the temptation trial, which is the one for the thing I want that feels good that I shouldn't do. And then there's the trial test, whereas the thing I don't want that I'm trying to avoid, and I do something that I probably shouldn't do so that I can avoid this thing. But either way, both are a test, and it's a test with a big stick, and it's a test with a carrot. Carrot or a stick. Some of us will take the stick and eat the carrot, and others will eat the carrot, and the stick is enough to keep us right. But essentially, it's, will I do what you said and avoid this thing that I want to do, or do the thing I know I should do, but no, I won't enjoy.
Or what if I know I will enjoy it, I just don't feel like doing it?
That too.
Yeah. I saw this thing that said everything is hard. Choose your hard. Marriage is hard. Divorce is hard. Dieting is hard. Not dieting is hard. It's like just to choose your hard. And some days we just don't want to choose hard.
I hate that because some things are harder than others. I ain't gonna hold y'all. In my head, it's harder to be poor than to be rich. I ain't gonna hold y'all. Just being honest here. But I get the sentiment.
Maybe.
What do you mean? In this year of our Lord 2025?
I think it depends on. I think a lot of the hard and not hard depends on kind of your outlook and what you're looking for. Right. Okay. So in my opinion, I'll be honest with you. Like, marriage isn't hard for me.
Right.
So it's not. So it's
Single life might be harder for you.
I don't think that'll be hard for him either. But
no, I would say, let me be clear. It might be harder for him to make it to the pearly gates. You know what I'm saying? It might be one of them.
Oh yeah.
It's what you value. I'm just saying. So So I think it comes down to kind of who you are, what you value, that makes things hard. Like, for some people, going to the gym, I hate working out. I despise it. I was telling Jewel the other day, like I don't like it at all. She's like, but when you're in there, don't you? I was like, no. I hate every minute of it.
Every minute of it. I do it because I know it's good for me.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't enjoy a minute. I never have enjoyed a minute of it. right?
I thought that was just me because
I mean,
me all day.
No, there's sight that might be enjoyable, but I don't enjoy any of it, right? But there are people that love it.
Yeah.
It's never hard for them. It is actually
the pain is actually amazing. I'm not gonna hold you.
Yeah. So Sharika absolutely loves it, and so it just depends on kind of how your what your outlook is and how you're made up and whatnot.
I think we should also lean in on how verse 7 talks about your own eyes.
Yeah.
Like some of us want to be not wise in your friend eyes, the pastor's eyes, the neighbor eyes. You know what I mean? It's like some of us need to take better counsel, but also know what counsel to take and what not to take.
Right.
I think that line though comes in after 5 and 6, which is it's a comparison of yours versus his. Yeah. I would even argue to lean into what you are saying, that when I choose someone else's that's not his, it's still mine. I could lump all of that into his or not his, and in this case, mine is anything that's not his. If I get it from Jerry and Jerry is not aligned, or Jerry's idea is not aligned, or in contradiction to what then I'm trusting me over him. I'm trusting Jerry, which is really I'm trusting me because I'm not trusting him anymore.
Well, I don't know. I think there's some messages that I've received from others that are directly from God.
Yes, absolutely. So we're talking about when it's in contradiction. Yes.
Okay, that's where I was leaning on. Like, don't use other people to, in so many ways, co-sign what you want to do.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? There's always somebody out there who's going to co-sign my foolishness.
But I feel like that what plays into what I think you guys are going to talk about later on too, of just about truth in that regard. Like, how do you define that? Because I'm in my perspective, I might not be the only one, but I look at God's word and this is truth. God's wisdom is truth. Now, how do we then look at that in that next lens, in that next conversation where it seems as though some people do like to kind of gather with those that believe the same thing, like that is truth for them.
So that becomes a hard thing to pass out truth, and then there's truth, and then there's interpretation of truth. There's data, and then there's information. And depending on the processing of the data, you could get two different sets of information. So, defining truth becomes challenging. Not impossible, but challenging.
Okay.
Yeah. But well, I mean, just say
defining
absolute truth is challenging, not truth. Because there's a reason why there's a term called lies or falsehoods, because they are opposite to truth and they're easily distinguishable. Right? But what I was referring to was, when you come to things like interpreting the Bible and what God is saying, right? That interpretation is where the challenge lies, not in the truth of the thing itself, but in the interpretation of it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I was pointing the challenge to be, not in separating truth from lie.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So I was I'm gonna transition to those who are watching online. Sharika shared a video with me from on Instagram. It was a clip from I guess a podcast that the Atlantic newspaper was having with two people. It was a small clip. but the essence of it was around the idea of power. And before I get to allow Sharika to share her thoughts on it, and I'm sharing it because it kind of ties into where Courtney led today. I was listening to another video, a news video, and is that guy from MSNBC, the white one with the glasses? It's the young guy with the glasses. He was be there on the night. Can't remember what his name is. He used to be on at the time when Chris Matthews was on, and now he has his own show there. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Chris Hayes. He made the statement, and I thought he was quoting somebody, but then I looked up the statement and I realized that there was one that he constructed, and it wasn't actually a quote from anyone. I wrote it down because it was profound. He says, I wrote it down. The concentration of power leads to an abuse of power. And I thought about, we want a king. I thought about how God gave the 12 tribes land, and then he did not set up a centralized power structure in the land. Intentionally, he did not. The people decided in their own wisdom, Courtney, that centralized power was better for them. And God told them, if you centralize this power, this man is going to take advantage of you all. If you consolidate the power, you set up the terms for abuse. And that's exactly what happened. Then Jesus comes and he has these disciples, and he sets up this church in this flat structure with 12 disciples so that they could balance and check each other. You know what the good people of the church do decide? To consolidate and centralize power behind a single leader. And what happens after that? Abuse of power. I'm just saying that sometimes we think, and I'm saying I'm leveraging this to talk about what Courtney talked about, the wisdom in our own eyes. In our minds, there's good reasons and logical reasons for designing a system with centralized power. There's efficiencies that we perceive and all these kinds of things. But the God who sets up the thing and gives it to us notably leaves that out and does not give us a system like that. You have to ask yourself, well, why?
I'm a little confused. So you're saying that God does not operate with centralized power?
He has not given humans, and the system that he's designed for humans is not one where that he designs and gives to them. It's not one of centralized power.
Well, no, because he's supposed to be the centralized power.
Correct.
So centralized power. So I guess my thing.
But even his power is not centralized. Even his powers is he's operating in a decentralized power structure even himself, right? Even the Father himself is not. While he has sole authority, he's now deferred this authority to his Son, who now works in concert with the Spirit, and they made man in their image, right? So even in those structures, you don't have that centralization. Now he has final authority, and he is King and Kings and Lords of Lords, and so I'm not going to dispute that.
That's pretty centralized.
Or you have.
I think it's taken from the structure that existed, right? God had central power, right?
But God is not just a individual. God is a how do we say it the last time? A collective.
Mm-hmm.
We're introduced to him as a collective, as a them him.
Well,
let us make man. When we introduce to him, he says, "Let us make man in our image."
Yeah, so he's kind, right? So, but it's still him, right? And the reason why you know it's him is because Jesus deferred.
I'm gonna use this broken human analogy, right?
Mm-hmm.
in the design of the American government system, and it's broken. So I'm just using it illustratively. In its idealist sense, right? You do have a single president who represents,
Correct.
and he is the leader of the executive branch of government.
Correct.
But his power is not centralized.
Correct.
But he is the guy.
Correct.
Good.
That's not the same.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
No. No, because
That's not?
because there are rules established where you have the reason why you have the three branches is to keep checks and balances on each other. Jesus and the Holy Spirit are not there to keep checks and balances on God.
All right,
Let's
try another illustration.
And the only reason I say that is because I think that men replicated the centralization of power that God had. The problem is that men don't have the full capabilities of who God.
I'm gonna push back on that by going back to creation. When God creates man in his image, he creates a them, not a him. And while he may start with a him, he starts with a him and leaves him by himself so he can understand that he is a them and the value and the importance of being a them.
Okay.
Right? Because he makes everything else in them, and he makes the man first, lets him become aware of his oneness, singleness, and then brings the other one in, which was always part of the plan because he said, let us make them, right?
Yes,
but it wasn't an afterthought, right? The plan was always at them. He just did it in a phase.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying he did it in phases so the man could appreciate the value of the them.
But it's still patriarchal.
No.
It is.
No.
But whether it's patriarchal or not, there's still a central power.
Right.
But there isn't. That's my point.
It's still Adam.
No, it's them. It was always them.
Adam is
always a them.
Yeah.
And it's not just the them, it's the children that come afterwards. Adam is all of them.
I think I'm with Kendrick here. It's nice for me to consider your opinion and your feelings, but at the end of the day, the father is making the decisions around here. And at the end of the day, Adam was being held accountable for the behavior of Eve.
I would challenge the father is making all the decisions. Because if he's making all the decisions,
I shouldn't say that.
No. The final
decisions is what I'm saying.
And
Jesus says it all the time. My father got it. That's between my father got that. That ain't on me.
Well, there's Jesus pre-incarnation who didn't speak like that. Jesus post-incarnation kept deferring to the Father to demonstrate how we are supposed to relate to the Father. Pre-incarnation, I mean, the God of the Old Testament, who's fire, brimstone, everything, showing his face is Jesus. And the Father is like, do your thing.
So God changes?
No, he's not changing. He's not changing.
That's what we just said. Because if he changed post reincarnate, whatever it was.
No. So he becomes human.
When he became man. When
he
Jesus
becomes human, and what does he do? He puts his divinity aside.
So I guess my overall pushback is that I think that the children of Israel didn't come up with this idea on their own. The children of Israel replicated what they saw.
Yes, from other people.
Correct.
From other people.
And other people actually replicated this centralized power from the devil was the one who introduced the idea of centralized power, not God.
They replicated centralized power from God. God has always had centralized power.
I would submit and suggest Lucifer was the one who said, I am going to get one over on this guy, and you all are going to worship me. It's not about them anymore. It's about me. Lucifer is the one who is pushing the centralized ideology.
God kicked him out because it violated the centralized power. I'm God.
Mm-hmm.
Them. It was never I am. It was always a them.
Yeah, it was always a them.
God.
We're introduced to a them. It doesn't start with a him. It starts with a them.
So the fact that I sit at the right hand of something means that the center is it.
Right.
The right hand of then it is a position that's designated and only given based upon whatever is. So the is exists, and then everything else other than is based upon whatever that center position is. So I said the right hand of God means that there is something there.
I will push back because I can't remember which one of the councils it was where Egg White was saying that when they sit in circular fashion. So right is eventually left is eventually right because they're in a circle.
Maybe. I don't know if that's true.
And just to Jared's point, they were always introduced from inception as them.
And when
my thing is this: whether they sat in a circle, it doesn't matter. The Bible talks about right hand of.
Yes.
That's it.
But and the imagery in the right hand is there is a main figure, and then there's someone who is subordinate to that main figure. Absolutely.
That's all I'm saying.
But the point of that imagery again was vis-a-vis the incarnation, where Jesus, because he said he sits on the right hand and the power and authority is given over to it. So it's God demonstrating for you to save mankind. Them are demonstrating one of us has to become like them, and we'll have to put this power and authority aside.
But someone gave the power. It wasn't democracy.
It's not that they gave.
I'm not saying it's democracy. So here's the difference. I'm not saying it's democracy, and I'm going back to the creation of humankind. When men and women were created, was the power consolidated with the man?
The final say was.
Was it?
Yeah. I don't.
Where did you get that in the creation story? Particularly in when sin comes in and the consequence comes in, and God says, what's going to happen now because of this sin thing is that you're going to struggle for this power.
Correct. But you are going to be subordinate to this person,
and that's a sin consequence. That's not
understood.
That's not a. I'm going back to the design, the original, and again, go back to all the designs. The human creation design was not a singular concentration of power. It was a two-person shared experience, right? Two different roles, two different things, but it was two. When he comes and he decides he's going to build a civilization, there's no centralized power. It's 12 tribes. And the whole system he sets up. And
yes, correct.
And he gives them to run.
Was him.
Yes, the central power was him.
It existed.
Yes.
People replicated it, right? Kings.
So here's the question. Why didn't God give the command? So maybe again, I could be interpreting this. The commands to not eat their fruit was not given to both of them. It was given to Adam. When all the stuff went down,
it actually was given to both of them. And in the oh god, this guy, I don't remember his name now, did a fantastic expose of this. Even when they said Eve started to eat the fruit and Adam, the husband was with her. When Eve was being tempted, Eve wandered off from Adam and started that conversation with the serpent. Got tempted, and while she's being tempted about the fruit, Adam shows up. And the difficulty is Adam shows up and doesn't say anything. He doesn't intervene. He doesn't interject. She eats the fruit, hands it to him. So there was he went down a whole path about when people are in situations and the man is silent, and separate conversation we wouldn't get into now. But the point is, had they always operated as a unit and as a them, this was even part of the conversation with Jesus talking to them in the cooler day, warning them, I need you all to stay together, always operate as a unit. The minute one of you all tries to do this on your own, you're going to run into trouble. And then so said, so done, right?
No, but I also think in reading the chapter, no, I don't agree. When reading the chapter in verse 11, God is saying,
verse 2 of verse chapter 1.
Chapter 3,
verse
11.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying, God said, who told you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree which I commanded you not to eat? There wasn't a plural there.
It actually was in the original language. It is a plural.
No.
Because God always referred to Adam as them. It was always a plural.
Well, his response shows that
His
it's not
response was
plural.
different. The man
His
said,
response said, the man says, the woman you gave me or gave to be with me, she gave me the fruit. So this is a one-on, this isn't a plural conversation.
This is again an example of what sin does, because what she then does is say, the serpent you put in the garden.
That's
so
not
the first thing they do is
So
they
Jerry, I
pass
think she
the
says the
blame down.
conversation, he calls to Adam, the guy.
Right.
When he comes down in the garden, he calls out for Adam. He doesn't call for them, he calls for him.
And
he does call him.
He just calls him and says, I told you don't do this.
No, but he says,
you gave it to me.
He came and God said, where are you? And he said, I was hiding from you. And
it's God a one-on-one. It's a man-on-man conversation. Well, whatever. It is.
He does call for Adam. He calls for Adam and asks, where are you? And Adam says he was hiding. Yes. But that does not, but does that mean that Adam had some kind of responsibility here, or that there's a centralizing of the power with Adam? Does it mean
I'm not gonna try to figure this out from like the way we operate in life, but if something happens, and someone comes to me first, like, yo, what happened?
So
it may be that I'm just the one there, or it may be that there's a responsibility that I have that's perceived or existing.
So let's go with the story. Let's go with the story.
Based upon me being there first or whatever.
Based on the story, verse 8 says, God didn't come because something happened. He came as he normally would in the cool of the day. Right? And when he did not see them, he says, yo, where y'all at?
No, he says to the man, where you at?
Yeah.
And so
come on, Jared.
Going back to the centralized thing, I'm not saying that Eve doesn't sit at the right hand of Adam. joke. What I'm saying is there is this heightened responsibility of I ain't called for both of y'all. I called for you, and I told you don't do this. Yes. And you turn around and respond to me and said, it's the chick you gave me. And then I'm like, where this chick at? Chick's like, it was the serpent. I think the part that, to your point, he came down, don't see none of them. He couldn't care less at that moment where Eve was. I'm talking to this one right here because I'm holding you at a higher level of responsibility because I commanded you not to do something.
So that's different from centralizing power. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. That's the same thing as having 3 children and you call for the eldest child. The eldest child is not in that dynamic of siblings. The eldest child the power is not centralized with the eldest child.
The power and understanding and knowledge of what I told you. Like you're the oldest. You should be responsible. You know what's going on. You know what my expectations were because I gave it to you.
Responsibility. That's not
responsibility is not necessarily concentration of power. So
yeah.
No, we're
not arguing.
Concentration of power leads to an abuse of power. I'm saying the design of the system is not one that's absent of responsibility and roles. We definitely have that, but the role is not connotate consolidation of power. And that's what I'm saying.
I guess that's my pushback, is that my consolidation of power, the idea of power centralized power came from God, based upon what I'm saying. And I think it's a heavenly concept, right? That was that people tried to replicate over time, and we still continue to try to do that. I don't think it's a foreign concept because God does it.
I would say God didn't give it to us. Even if, let's say that's just
don't
true,
disagree with you. Don't disagree. I don't
disagree.
You're right.
I don't
disagree with you on that. 100%.
And that's where we started, because I'm going to.
It was supposed to lie. It was supposed to continue to lie with him, but the only reason it doesn't, in the way we live, is because we replicate it.
And our replication is a bad imitation.
I would push back on that and say what we do is we do what Courtney's verses talks about. We don't trust his wisdom in not giving it to us.
Okay.
I think we want to replicate heavenly standards on earthly grounds, giving myself the power of God the Father.
Yeah, but that's what the serpent brought to Eve, right? When you do If
Right,
you
and
do
so
this,
what
you
we're
will have
saying
the
is,
power of him.
what
Don't
we're
disagree with
saying
that
is,
either.
imitation is the best form of flattery. We're doing it wrong. Like it's done wrong, right?
Yeah,
like
the children of Israel simply wanted what they wanted based upon what they've seen around them.
Other societies.
Yeah, with other societies, the pharaohs and the kings and the monarchs. That's
Right,
what they want.
They wanted that, but that was a broken system for them. It was a broken system for the monarch. It was a broken system for those other people.
Easy.
And
100%, because power is supposed to be centralized with God.
I'm not going to debate that. I am going to acknowledge that he is sovereign. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to acknowledge and not debate that he is sovereign.
Yes.
But I'm going to say that in his wisdom, he has not given us systems to operate where humans are given sovereignty. The systems that he initiates don't have human sovereigns.
Agreed.
And when we decide we want human sovereigns, for whatever the reasons, whether we're trying to be like God or whatever else, we are doing what the verse is saying not to do. We're trusting in our own wisdom and not his.
100%. Agreed.
Sorry, Mezzo, I saw your comment, but you are correct. It was a byproduct of sin. I want to bring it in. They didn't become Adam and Eve after sin. They were Adam and Eve prior to sin. Because it says in chapter, I think it's chapter 1.
Adam called her Eve, right?
Yeah. It was early in the story before they ate the fruit.
Do you think for me, Jared, though, going back to your point, is I reflect on the times when God, especially Jesus, God of the Old Testament, would be like, my father and I are one.
Mm-hmm.
And I always feel like the person who was always pushing this agenda of centralized power under him was Lucifer, right? Because even when Lucifer's like, if you will bow down and worship me, so skip this whole Godhead thing. You run it to me, I'll take care of you. And I mean, it's what he tells all of us, right? Forget the they, the them, this whole relationship with the Godhead, and skip that and just let me be the one.
Let me ask you something, Kenrick, to get to Jerry's point, because I'm not thinking about this. In your family structure, be careful because you're online and your wife can hear you. In your family structure,
100% sleep.
Okay, good.
And I provided something that will make her stay asleep.
All right, good.
Wow.
Melatonin.
Okay, I have a license for that medicine. Anyway, you distributed medicine. Anyway, in your family structure.
Okay, no, I didn't. Just the record, just because it's going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't pill Cosby anybody.
I wasn't even talking about pills, but yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking something more natural.
Yeah.
Anyway, is power centralized with you?
No.
You have your wife, you have your children in your family unit.
We have 3 women. Power's never centralized with me.
So let's change the family structure and assume it was you, a wife, and 2 sons, right?
Okay.
2 sons.
Okay.
Let's go with that. Hypothetical.
A man can dream.
Yeah.
Would power still be centralized within the father?
100%
in a family structure.
100% not.
Why? Because it's a family structure, right?
Yeah, I think it's and so it's a very different we try to implement the model that Christ provided to us, right? Where he is the central, where he is the central.
Is he?
He's the centralized leader. The goal is that it doesn't necessarily play out like that sometimes, right? But the goal is that he's the one that directs and leads, right? And so I think that's it. I think that even in that, right, when we're making decisions where we're not necessarily praying about every decision, right? I think that we kind of fall into our various niches and roles, and we have conversations and whatnot, right? And I think there's a checks and balances that exist where, depending on what it is, Jewel will be like, Kendrick, it's your decision, right? And then depending on what it is, I'll be like, Jew, like this is you. I'll support anything that you do.
So, sorry, I'm gonna get this. What was the question? I don't think there was a single question. Courtney, just background. Courtney had brought up Proverbs 3:7, and so we were talking about that trusting in your own wisdom thing. And I pointed out, based on a conversation that I was a part of, listening to a part of, and a video that I got from Sharika about the idea of power. It dawned on me that one of the comments made in the conversation was centralization of power leads to the abuse of power. And I thought about all the human community systems that God instituted and gave out directly did not have a concentration of power. The systems weren't designed with concentrations of power. And then men in their wisdom decided to make adjustments and consolidate power in and around things for functional reasons that they thought were wise. And it led to those very abuses of power. And so they were, to me, an example conversation of the point that Courtney was making in Proverbs 3 and 7. And that's kind of where many of you may have joined in on this conversation. Right? So what I'm asking of Kenrick now is, while you as the father have responsibilities in your role as father and a certain measure of authority in your role as father, and you have an expectation within your family that any instruction you give is to be carried out by your children, would you still believe that just by virtue of that, the fact that you have a certain level of accountability, responsibility, and directive, the ability to have final say, and the expectation of obedience, is that evidence in a family structure of centralized power within the father role?
I think it could be, but I think it just depends. But I think it depends on like the structure of the system, right?
Okay. The structure of the family.
The structure of the family. The family system, right? And for our family, fortunately or unfortunately, the girls understand that, yes, I'm their father, right? But there are plenty of times, right? And we've all experienced it. Maybe some of us experienced it. I experienced it, where, although, for instance, so the girls today, the girls take a bus comes and picks them up and takes them to school. They wanted to leave early today, so they text their mother. It was like, yo, can we leave early? Which either means them taking the metro or taking a taxi back home. And your mom was like, ask your dad. So I did it because I was like, I don't want to pay $40, $50 for you just to come home an hour and a half early, in a taxi. So if you want to come home, take a metro. So I said, take the metro. They immediately went back to their mother and was like, yo, can we take a taxi? There's an idea of centralized power. But at the end of the day, like, I think the system, you can think you have as much as you think you have, right? But
even
for them,
maybe let me do this.
But for them, they don't look at it from that perspective. They're like, there are two people here, right? Can I manipulate the situation based upon? And it's up to me and Jewel to be
a united front.
To be a united front for whatever that is. Now, sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not.
So their perception and the reality is between you and Jewel. Yes. That there isn't power isn't consolidated in your role and function.
100%.
it's a shared, it's a
it's a shared
a
responsibility.
partnership, right?
Correct.
Right. It's
Correct.
a us, not a me, not a he.
100%.
Right. While she's at your right hand, she's not subservient.
Agree.
Good. Right. In the children's perception, because it's two individuals, I might could take advantage of that. But it's your responsibility to provide a united front.
But even in the children's perspective, it's the same. Like, daddy doesn't have any more power than mommy, right? They may fear me more based upon some of the words I use and in my tone sometimes and whatnot, right? But there's, it for them, it's mommy and daddy got the same, what mommy says is just as good as what daddy says. Right?
Isn't that the authority that the son has
No.
right now?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
That is exactly the same design.
But
in terms of whose word is good, right? Because they are one, so much so that if he says it is as good as getting it from the other one. Yes.
So in practice, no. So in practice, so this is like some of those congressional hearings, right, where you ask for a yes or no, and like I can give you a yes or no, but it's actually not really a yes or no.
Okay, go ahead.
So
yes, but
yes, so yes, but
okay, I take the but. Go ahead.
But he's the son. You can't. He's a son. The fact that he's given power, he's given authority. So if someone gives you something, then they actually they have it. You didn't have it at some point, and you then received it from that person or entity. That's my only thing.
But it's a family, right? In a family, even though you are a son, by virtue of your role, all of this is yours.
Why?
Because
you are part of me.
Because it's mine.
But I have to give it to you.
The reason why the girls
I had you to have you share in it. Like think about the whole family dynamic. When you partner with your wife and you have these children, now it's all of you.
But this isn't a wife. This isn't a wife and husband relationship. This is a family relationship. So, for instance, whatever I have, right, at some point will be my kids.
If you choose.
If I choose.
Right.
But it's not theirs. The thing is, they act like it's theirs, and it's fine. I don't care. Right? But it's not theirs until I give it to them. And they can go, and the only reason they can speak on my behalf in certain situations is because I've been like, that's cool. You can speak on my behalf in these certain situations. That's my only thing, is that I can't see where power isn't centralized with God. It is centralized. And the thing, and what makes it different from what we do is that God's intentions, and he is pure.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
Where you centralize power with me or you or anyone else, we are not pure. And so there is the likelihood where it will be like some shady dealings going on or whatnot, because it will be corrupted. Right. And that, I guess that's my only thing.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just pushing on the idea that God, in helping us understand him, a lot of the illustrations that he's used, that he designed and introduced to us to help us understand him. And even when we talk about Jesus and Jesus's deferral, he defers and uses the language of son and father to help us understand the dynamic, right? He doesn't say Lord and Master. He refers to him as Father, right? And then he talks about the oneness. So he's describing a more family dynamic, right?
Agreed.
And while he's deferring to the authority of the Father, it's his Father. And so there's significance in that. And that's why I asked, in the family role, just because the father has responsibility doesn't necessarily mean that the father role is a consolidation and centralization of power. there's a responsibility, perhaps, but not necessarily a consolidation of power. And maybe that is a thing we probably need to define, because it may be nebulous the way we're using it.
But I think that's the reason why there may not be a consolidation of power is because there's a choice that was made where they chose not, whoever that is, chose not to consolidate power, which they have the power to do that.
Right. And that's my point. That is exactly my point. Maybe he does have the authority and the privilege or a discretion. What's the word there? Prerogative.
Prerogative, I think. Yep. Mm-hmm.
But even his approach to agape and the interests of others being the driving and the care and the concern and the active interests of others does not lead to, while you have the authority, doesn't necessarily lead to a consolidation, because I'm now operating in a this is our family, we all belong type thing. I'm not coming with the, my way or the highway type approach.
Correct.
Which
is why servant leadership, even within corporations, is something that is practiced now, because it helps to resemble that. Now, there's still someone that has to give the authority to
someone who has to be accountable. Yes,
correct.
Absolutely. But accountability is not necessarily power consolidation.
But the person that's accountable,
and is there a difference? Let me ask it this way: is there a difference between authority and power? And they're related, but are they one and the same?
Yes. I think yes and no. I think it depends on how you view it.
All right, tell me
the person in authority has power.
Yes.
Maybe. I can have the power to do something, but not the authority to do it. And I can have and in most cases, I have the authority to do something with the power to do it.
Correct. You can have the power to do something, but usually the authority gives the power to do something. However, that was probably given to you.
You don't have the authority to execute.
You don't have the authority.
And Jesus, in so many ways, when he was down here, showed us that I have the power to do stuff. I don't have I'm not told to execute against it. Like, he could have saved himself from being crucified. We all know that. I don't have the authority. That's not what I signed up for. That's not who I'm leading myself to. That's not who I've given. That's not what I'm here for. Right? Like,
correct.
I can do it. I can get the angels to come down and give me food, like Satan said. I know you have the power to do this. The authority, though, I've given it up. Whether I shouldn't say that. Whether he gave it up or he didn't have it, who knows? I've argued this for years. At the end of the day, that's, and for me, the separation of authority and power.
Gotcha. So I like what GPT is saying. It says power refers to the ability or capacity to influence or control others, even without their consent. Right? While authority,
say that one more time. Power
refers to the ability or capacity to influence or control others, even without their consent.
Okay.
Authority, on the other hand, is the right or legitimate claim to exercise power.
Yeah, like my boy. I'm not gonna say it out loud. There's a couple of good bad villains out there who had power and no authority.
Yeah. So, and that's what I'm about to say. In conclusion, it says an individual can have power without authority, but authority usually comes with the acceptance or acknowledgement of the right to wield power. And that's where I was coming from when I was on this, thinking about it. When you consolidate power, the ability to do something within one person or role or function, when you bring that together, it leads usually to an abuse of that power.
But power can be a verb or a noun.
Yes.
So it depends on the use of power.
Yeah,
the
I
power
was
can be
saying
a
the
thing.
consolidation of it. If you give all this power, the ability to do something, and the rightful ability to do something, authority and power, to you centralize it in one place, and you don't have a balance or check,
To the verb.
you let it lead, it usually leads to the abuse, which is why I believe, and this is now my belief, you don't see the centralization of power in the structures that God gives for men to organize themselves. He introduces a family structure where this power is not centralized. He introduces the Israelite system where power is not centralized. And then he introduces the church where power is not centralized. And humans in their wisdom.
It's not centralized within on earth with humans.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay.
No. He has not introduced a centralized system of power for human operation.
Correct. Because it all lies with him.
And even then, he gives authority for people to run and do their thing.
Absolutely. He gives it because it's his.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I just thought that was interesting. how we in our wisdom think that our system is going to be more effective than God's.
Yeah.
Because it's expedience why you have a king. Why all these people give up their rights and their authority and power and yield it to the central figure. That's
you say expedience. What's the expedience for?
It's expedience that would have led to a system. Right? If I empower him to make this choice, for like, let's go example. When you have these wartime powers where you vest the executive with a set of powers, that's expedience, so that he can make decisions quickly. So you're not hung up by the process, and so that you can get things done. You get rid of the bottlenecks of the conversation. You get bottlenecks of the trying to get to an agreement, right? You get to, it's perceived. I mean, I say it's perceived expedience.
But do you so I'm going back to the children of Israel. The power is centralized with God. That's how the system was built and created. They wanted something different of what they saw. I don't think they wanted anything from like it wasn't the purpose wasn't expedience. The purpose was we don't always like what you've asked us to do. We kind of want to do what we want to do. There might be a better way.
So let's go back to Samuel.
It wasn't to decentralize anything and be like, hey, guys, I know you're doing your thing, but we can make these decisions a little faster down here, and then thank you for the power you've given us.
So let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 8. Courtney, you can read from verse 1.
Okay. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as Israel's leaders. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah, and they served in Beersheba. But his sons did not follow his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice. So all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, "You are old, and your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have." But when they said, "Give us a king to lead us," this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord told him, "Listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods. So they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly and let them know. But the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights.
So
Samuel.
pause there.
Okay.
Their request was out of expedience, perceived expedience. And if you go from before, Israel had gone, there was no designated leader. And as need had, God would raise up somebody to lead on his stead, as he wasn't down there, directing traffic. But as need happens, he would, and it wouldn't be from the same tribe every time, and it would be according to circumstance. He would take, hey, you, I need this from you, and you, I need that from you. And they didn't have a centralized system of government. They didn't have that. There was a collection of families, essentially, that the society that they had, the society that God gave them, and even the rules that he gave to govern them from the mountain after the fire was designed around a collection of families, right? Because the design of a family does not have that. Families are interested in the care for each other, and it's not just about me and mine, right? Because if it's all family, then it's all us. When you now have this king, it now becomes about him and not the family, right? And so the people were like, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So to secure our future, we want to have control of our future. And to have control of our future, we think a king is the best way.
So I disagree.
All right, tell me more.
And walk with me through this. We didn't. I don't know what that is. Can you hear that?
Yes. There's background noise by Cliff.
You in the club, Cliff? What you doing?
He just muted himself.
You
muted yourself.
It might be some of the sites you have up that in the background.
We can't hear you anymore.
No, I wasn't saying anything. Because I wasn't saying anything, I muted myself again. That's all.
It wasn't you saying anything.
You were getting ready to say something, so I was listening. I was like, let me mute myself.
Walk with you through this. Yes, go ahead. You said walk with me through this.
Walk with me through this. And so Moses wasn't a king, but they looked at him with that level of authority, right?
For a while.
Okay.
And
then
they
looked at him with that level of authority.
And then he visited his father-in-law, and what happened?
Same thing with Joshua so there were people that had that authority, right? The difference was that the people that were in authority, like Moses, like Joshua, they understood where their true power came from. So it wasn't the idea of a king, right? It was the idea that when you have someone in power or with authority that has the ability to abuse, which is the first one that happened was Saul, right?
And David.
Was that again?
And David.
Well, I said the first one, but it goes on, right? So at the end of the day, I think it comes down to that.
Right.
Yes, there were different systems that were set up, but at the end of the day, the person that had authority from God, which was no different than what the authority was given to Saul, is how you view it and how you operate within that authority and the power that you're given.
We're not in dispute, because we delineated between authority and power. And yes, Moses had a certain level of authority. The priest had a certain level of authority. And Moses couldn't do some of the things that the priest could do. So he didn't have, the power was not consolidated in Moses.
Correct.
He had authority, but
Correct.
Aaron had authority. And then these other people.
But the power wasn't consolidated. The power by design wasn't even consolidated with Saul. Saul was still supposed to go into and consult with Samuel, the prophet. That he was supposed to talk to God. Like the power by design still wasn't consolidated with that.
Well,
it then became consolidated when the person chose not to.
So more power was consolidated under the king than it was with just Samuel being a prophet. Right? Whatever power Samuel had as a prophet, in his role as a prophet, he did not have the same kind of power that Saul the king had, because they
based upon Saul's desire for
upon the humanistic for a while, both Samuel and Saul were operating in their roles concurrently. Not so? Samuel was alive, running as a prophet, as he was before. His role didn't change, but now you added this other role of king.
Correct.
Before there was a king, nothing that Samuel was doing was kingly. He was still prophetly the whole time. Think about it. Think about it.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
He did not lead in any way differently than he did. Let's go to the scripture.
Don't know if we can go there.
Let's go to the scripture.
So you had priests, you had judges, you had emissaries, everybody had their own specific role
and authority with that
and their
role.
own specific duties and authority. When the king came along, he usurped a lot of that.
And put
you would have wanted the king to go to those,
and so it consolidated the power under the king.
That's why God was not in favor of it.
It's a consolidation of power into one thing out of expedience. It's the same thing like when you have
I guess the expedience is what's getting me.
The people are saying it's expedience for them in their perception, and they describe it here. We had a system that was working, and you're about to leave, and these guys are not making any sense. So it's expedient wise in our best interest to have a succession plan. And that's what they said. It's expedient. We need a succession plan. And so it made sense to them.
And here's where I may throw a slight monkey wrench in that, because we're talking about Samuel and his sons, right? They were wayward. They were supposed to be priests and they weren't doing right. So the people were like, yo, they jacking up the temple. They doing things wrong. Like, when is this gonna get solved? Like, because nobody's solving this. Everybody knows they're doing wrong. The father is not taking care of it, and this has been going on for a long time. So
because there was
solve the problem.
That's my point. Power was centralized when it violated, because the idea was that God was going to be the central. Power was centralized with God.
Well, here's what
Samuel was not making decisions based upon what God was leading when it had to do with his kids. And so people look for something else. Samuel began centralizing power because he didn't do what he was supposed to do.
Samuel began centralizing power? What do you mean?
If they wanted, based upon what Cliff is saying, right? Nothing was happening to Samuel's kids when they were doing wrong. If Samuel was looked upon as the authority that was supposed to deal with that, the reason why it didn't get dealt with is because Samuel didn't do it, because he had the power to do it. So he had the power. He used his power or authority to not do, which is one of the things that people get criticized for all the time when we talk about centralizing power. They either do or not do. They do bad or they don't do good, because they have the power and the buck stops with them.
He was a bad father.
One of the challenges with that line of thought,
and leader.
One of the challenges with that kind of thought is Deborah and Samson and Jephthah and all these people who came before Samuel, right? And how God, as the king, was setting up all these intermediary people In fact, he only set them up because he needed something from them at different points. In fact, the system that he designed wasn't meant necessarily to have these people do things, but they had, hey, I need you to do this, so I raise you up to do that, and then we move on, and then we go back. And then as we have a need, I would raise someone up. And so God had done that with Samuel. And yes, his sons were faltering, but he was still the thing. They were saying, this system of God to raise up as needed is not trustworthy because of Samuel's sons.
Correct.
So we don't want God's system anymore because Samuel's sons, we can't. No, God didn't raise up Samuel's sons. Right?
Agree.
But then that's my point about expedience. In their mind, practical
the structure itself
didn't seem like a wise one to the people. And their history, the Solomon, the history of Judges, and now this Samuel thing, now we're not doing that no more. We don't like God's way anymore.
But that wasn't God's way. That's my point. Power was already centralized. The idea that if God didn't raise up Samuel's sons, then that wasn't God's way.
No, God's way in terms of not having a centralized figure. That's what I'm talking about in terms of God's way. That's what I was referring to. God would raise up Samson, and then the people there was not ever a time where there was a leader who was just the leader over everybody. There was someone who was raised up to do something. God was leading the entire time.
Agreed.
And all the people he raised up, Gideon and whoever else and whatever else, over time were for specific purposes. It was mission oriented. Do this, deal with that, handle this for me. And he was choosing who and when and how. Agreed. And then he wouldn't have anything, and he would leave them to their decentralized family structure. In this season, it was Samuel and his sons. In this season, the people were like, we don't want that going forward. So their practical solution to solve their problem, expediency, was a king. And in choosing that, they were saying, God, your system, we don't like because we don't trust you. Because if he was ideally in charge in their mind, then they know that these boys would be dealt with because God is in charge. And if God is not dealing with them, and Samuel is not dealing with them, then who is in charge? We can't see what's happening.
Okay.
And so it's a distrust of God's system because he's letting it happen. I mean, look at the history. He's letting it happen.
Yeah.
Yes or no? He's letting it happen. And that's what he says here. By asking for a king, they're rejecting my authority. They're saying they don't like how I'm doing this thing.
Yeah.
And how I'm doing it is not to raise anybody up. And he dealt with Eli and his sons.
Or
he dealt with Eli and his sons before Samuel came, and Eli's sons were the ones acting the fool. God didn't deal with them.
He did have somebody raised up. It was Samuel.
Exactly. First he raised up Eli to raise Samuel. Right? Eli and his sons started acting up, and God.
Samuel hadn't gone anywhere.
What?
Samuel hadn't gone anywhere.
That's my point. God dealt with them, and he would have dealt with Samuel and his sons too.
Correct.
You're muted. Moving back, I can't hear you.
Eli and his sons.
Yes, he dealt with Eli and his sons. And he would have dealt with,
I'm saying Eli and his sons, not
he would have
Samuel
dealt with Samuel's sons eventually as well.
Yeah.
Correct.
Just like he dealt with all the people who were, like he dealt with Nebuchadnezzar and everybody else who he empowered and they didn't act right, he dealt with them. Because he was king.
Correct.
They just didn't
He was the king.
He was the king, and they didn't like how God was running his kingship. So they wanted their own king.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so they centralized human power to do so against the design that God gave them.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that centralization, was led to this corruption. I mean, there was corruption before, but there was no way to check the corruption.
Well, they should have rose up instead of asking for a king. They should have rose up and said you need to get these kids about the road.
Right.
Or they should have just had a democratic republic like we have. And,
watch out.
Man.
I'm not saying democratic republic was God's system either.
That can govern and keep everything good.
I'm saying God set up family systems. He set up family structures. Even I give you watch how the church was set up. They started having these family structures that were these independent groups, right? All over the place. The Corinthians, the Ephesians, the church in this place, the church in that place, small family units. And while you did have a council of leaders, you didn't have a leader, huh?
But people like central authority.
Yeah,
that's the problem. People want it.
Yeah,
people want to be led.
People don't want to be led. They want to defer. They want to defer the responsibility, and they don't like the toughness of the conversations. They don't like the toughness of the negotiations. They want to just get their way done, but someone who supports their ideas and push it on everybody else. They don't want to have the dialogue. They don't want to have the negotiations. They don't want to, have those tough things that make the society work.
That's why we're headed for a new world.
The reason why I say people want to be led is because I mean, you look at Paul, right? I mean, people.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean by look at Paul?
I think people become disciples of one, right? Not just because of the message that's spoken, but because they want someone to follow. They want it. It kind of says what you're saying, but a little differently, right? It allows me not to have to process through things, right? Someone gives me a blueprint to follow, right? And it makes sense, and I like it, and it's comfortable, or whatever, right? And it suits whatever it is I'm looking for at that particular time. And now I can just follow that.
So the challenge is the people they may end up following the individual, but the individual is representing an ideology that people are being taught to implement, that they are being taught to have ownership of and implement. And in true discipleship, you become a teacher and then you teach someone else. And the people are not following you, but your way. And so the way gets complicated, not the
But the way is based upon an ideology that is set forth by someone.
Or someone's. It could be an ideology of a collective.
Correct.
But the ideology is what people, and the thing about the ideology is that it's the implementation of the ideology they now have responsibility for. So it's an ideology that helps you make decisions, not an ideology that directs your activities. Think about it. Think about it.
I don't know about that.
Think about what happened with the children of Israel.
I think the best case scenario. There are many. I mean, look at religion as it is.
Yeah, but religion is a broken thing. Think about what, and I'm going back.
Agreed. I'm just thinking about it in the practice of now.
Yes, the practice of now. Jesus comes and says, so God brings the children of Israel out of Egypt, where they had all these ideologies and mixed up understandings in their head. They had all these kinds of things, right? The Egyptian way and everything else in their minds when they were coming out on how societies run. God is trying to establish this new thing, and so he gives them a lot of laws, right? Because in order to help them navigate, I need to give them some guidance, because they're not going to be able to make sense of this on their own. So I'm going to spell some things out specifically. They ended up giving more authority to the specific things and then miss the message, the ideology that is being, that you meant to implement and use wisdom to implement, right? By the time Jesus comes and says, yo, really all I'm saying is love God, love people, right? And how do you implement that? These were just ways that I was helping you figure out how this makes sense. But the ideology is love God and love for others and love for people. And the Spirit is going to help you figure out the implementation piece. And so it's the ideology that you now have to leverage wisdom to be able to practice. that you develop from scenario to scenario to situation that you now have to have ownership for. And what I'm doing is teaching you how to do it so that when you go, you can figure out how to leverage this thing. It's like what we teach our children in math. We teach them to count and to read and to do these things so that they can apply that in whatever they do with their lives. So that math is something they can now apply as they need because they have these rudiments in the thing. And then we teach it to other children so that when they come up, they have this tool that they can apply. Everybody is not necessary to be a scientist, but a scientist could do math in the same way a business person can do math, right? Same math, and teach math, right?
I feel like a 9/11 hijacker. I feel like I took the conversation, and
no, but
I apologize, everyone.
Out of all examples to use,
I think you helped to unpack some of the nuances of the conversation, to be honest. So I am grateful for your hijack.
Yeah, but I see everybody's eyes glazing over, and I feel like, you know, the conversation might have Bill Cosby somebody, like it put everybody to sleep.
Courtney, how you feel about Proverbs 3:7?
I feel good.
You thought it wasn't going to be something, and an hour and a half later, we still on Proverbs 3:7.
Oh, that's where it started? Proverbs 3:7?
Yeah, because I only brought this in to tie into, and I leveraged the power example to talk about Proverbs 3:7. It's the wisdom of ourselves.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, power is one of those things. It was one of those we trust in our own wisdom.
Yeah.
God gave us a way, and we're like, nah, we know that your way. Yeah, I ain't too sure about that. I ain't too sure about that, God.
Yeah. I like that.
This way is better. He's like, trying to tell y'all don't want that.
True.
I don't think those people saw it coming because they didn't know any better. The children of Israel. I mean, God did say, well, if you have a king, this is what he's going to want. And this is what you're going to have to give him. And they're like, yeah, we cool with that. I know they probably wish they didn't have that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like all those examples is like, okay, this king is going to be taking. And it's like, as God as king, he's giving.
He's give him.
Like, nah.
But very rarely do we think about, even when we're processing decisions, we don't think about the losing scenario.
Yeah, we do. I do.
That's the loser.
I think.
Right. I mean, the thing is like you think about the glory of it, right? And it's, and I think that's what people process. So I don't think they were ignorant in asking for a king. I think they understood the structure of king as they understood the structure of king.
Right, but they didn't understand the implications of it.
Correct, because it was all the glory, right? It was all, it was the power and everything that they revered about what a king and a kingdom provided, right? The reality is that they fought against kings and some of them kings lost, right? It's not always, so it's just kind of how you, it's kind of how you view whatever it is that you're deciding on in the decision that you're making. And sometimes you think it's rosier than it is.
Also, sometimes we value things that aren't as important as some other things that God has given us.
Yeah, no one thought about HIV. It was the.
No, but they knew to think about it.
It was a threesome in the forum. Magic didn't think about
that. Folks, I think it's time for us to wrap this on up. Seeing that Mr. Irving Johnson just won the presidential award for his awareness of the HIV.
It had to be. I'm just saying, I think we view things certain ways Just
with
in
unlimited
general.
knowledge,
With
unlimited
unlimited knowledge.
understanding, and yeah. 'Cause I don't think Adam and Eve, if they knew what the world would become if they'd had that fruit, I don't think they eat it.
No.
Agree.
Yeah.
Because they had no concept of death, right? And what
But
that,
not just
and what
that,
that was.
the level of evil and
outside.
own way thing that this one action opens the gate to.
I think going back to the 9 minutes, just outside of Eden. Like, this man really like kicked us out? That's crazy, right? Like, I
thought the whole world was like this. This is just a section of the world.
Exactly. Like, there's something outside. There's an outside. Like, even that in itself, I don't think they imagined there's an outside.
Correct. Which
Wow.
means them Bama's are walking in
They
circles.
didn't
for
even
a
imagine
minute.
it was an
For a
outside.
minute.
You couldn't see outside, dog.
Wow.
Like, you must not. Your legs didn't walk. They weren't.
Yeah,
You
that's
didn't have that long
profound.
a stride.
They
Or
was,
that's just how big Eden was.
They were there for a minute.
practically,
No,
yeah.
people
Eden
haven't
could have
left
been
the
so
Bronx,
big that
huh?
they didn't get to explore and realize there was a boundary, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But I'm just talking about how narrow our perspectives are, because even within the limit, even within, let's say the city, let's say Eden was really big,
Yeah.
right? Let's say Eden was really big. As big as it is, that they couldn't cover it. There's something bigger than that they didn't have perspective on.
Are there dimensions for Eden?
I don't know.
I get it's not as big as the Bronx. You know
It's
what I'm
gotta be
saying?
bigger than the Bronx.
That's OD.
It's gotta be bigger than the Bronx.
That's crazy.
I would say it's probably like the size of Vermont, maybe.
Yo,
I don't know.
you ever try
It wasn't-
walking just
It
for the
wasn't
sake of
Cali.
walking?
It wasn't Texas.
Oh my god.
But yo, you just be walking for the sake of walking. Like, at some point you be like, I'm going back home. Like, you ain't just gonna be
So you had the Tigris and the Euphrates, right? That gives you
Right.
some kind of.
It gives you general location of where it is. Yeah,
But you don't know how long they were there.
Right.
absolutely. But my only
These
point is
long-
this: however big it was, there was something beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
You got NIV verses and you got Amplified verses.
I haven't been on the other side of Beltsville and I've been here forever. Like, it's not unthinkable to be like,
Yeah.
I ain't left Eden.
Yeah,
I
but
ain't got no
but
business.
you actually have something to
There are people who their whole lives never leave
They
New
leave
York.
the Bronx, not
But
New
the-
York.
Right, the Bronx, right.
hold on. But you have something to do. These Bama's ain't have nothing. What were they doing all day long outside
Exploring
of
was their
It
job.
said Karen
They were
for the
always-
garden. They put
They
them
were-
in the
yes.
garden, and
They were
he
exploring.
put everything that they need in there.
But
And
they still
this-
they were finding animals. You got to walk to find animals that you got to name. Oh, there's a new
Right.
one.
Nah, he brought them to him. Did he?
He brought every animal to him.
I think.
To name.
What's that?
To name.
Yeah.
So he
Name.
brought every animal to him. He's standing there and he just walking the assembly line to him.
Like they did on the
Essentially.
boat.
If
Just
they
like
did
what
it,
they did on the
if they did
boat.
it for the for the ark, why not?
No,
That's gonna
remember
take
his
place.
job was
Yeah,
to
the
tell
same,
them
the same
yeah,
ones.
That was
219.
his
He
job.
brought them to him. Yeah,
We're gonna
Wherever
take
he
a couple
was, though.
days.
yeah,
Huh?
wherever he was.
Wherever he was.
Yeah.
I'm
I guess-
actually more disappointed in them now than I like the eating of the fruit. The eating of the fruit is a level of disappointment. The fact that you didn't see the edges and you were 10 feet, 16 feet, like your stride had to be long. Like it wasn't like normal people walk.
Right. All right.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So everything had to be bigger.
They just
But you also had bigger animals that you were dealing with. You had
Yeah.
dinosaurs and mammoths and all
but they
kinds
were all nice. There was no sin. Like there was nothing
That's
to
true.
fear.
No, I'm not saying there was. I'm simply
And you
saying
didn't have clothes on, so there's no drag in your step. Like there's nothing to prevent you from getting where you need to go. Like that's they were gonna eat that fruit.
All right. So there's
they were
Eric,
both-
Eric,
No.
come on, man. Let's
there's
say this.
Eden and there's a garden in Eden,
Let
and they put them in there.
yeah, there's Eden, there's the garden, and then there's the earth. There's Texas, there's United States, and there's the North American continent.
Listen,
You know?
if you give me 1,000 years of perfect life, I'm gonna see all of Texas.
No, you're not.
Yes, I will.
No. Why would you
I'm not.
move?
I I have no reason to walk that far. Like that's
exactly. And if you set up shop
you
here,
have nothing else to do in life but walk.
Everything you need is there.
Henrik, I
Everything you
think
need
that's
is
your
there.
personality of exploration. But
and
some
because
of us,
you could take cars and trains and bus, they would have to
Right.
walk and then set up shelter somewhere else.
The only reason I don't walk is because my ancestors have been here for 6,000 plus years, and I have all of their tiredness in my bone. Like they were the first.
Yeah, but Kevin, all the peoples, they would travel and then set up shop somewhere.
Yeah.
They
You
would
can't
travel
walk.
and then
You
go
can't
to some
walk.
place and decide this is where we're gonna live. They
You
not,
can't
and then
walk.
after that they're not moving again.
You can't walk with the trillions of people inside of you and be lazy. Like stop.
Well,
ah,
they had not been fruitful and multiplied yet. There was no
Exactly.
reason for them to start
They had
expanding
all the
and
energy.
moving
That's why-
out. So they were,
That's why,
they
that's
were
why
there.
people abstain before games and all that kind of stuff to provide energy.
Henrik. Your
You hear
person-
Tiger, Jordan, Kobe. They're like they don't have sex during the playoffs or whatever because
But you know what? It could be that Eve decided to start walking. That's how she ran into the darn tree.
Now the tree was in the middle of the garden. The tree was
Right,
in the
but we
middle.
don't. But what we're saying is we don't know if they lived in the middle, if they lived the east coast of the tree or the
No,
west coast of the
we
tree.
don't know where they live. But we
Right,
know-
so she was on the move like Kenrick.
So
You see,
Yeah.
she on the move like Kenrick.
Being
it wasn't
Behind
like
the
the tree was on the outer skirts and she had to go exploring for it. The tree was
That's
No,
crazy.
what I'm saying is we don't know if she lives Central Tree. We don't know if she lives Central
We
Tree.
don't know if she lives Central Tree. No, we don't.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
according to Kenrick, let's say even Kenrick is kinfolk, right? She on the West Coast. She's like, you know what? Kenrick's right. I gotta carry these people on my back. So let me go see what else is out there. Bang, look at that. Oh, snap. That's that light that's been over here since the West. Let me go check it out.
But if she was foolish enough to live Central Tree, that's her fault because you got to look at that tree every single day about the one thing you can't look. No.
Right.
Don't touch it. Don't. Nah.
You
it
got
was a
all
fail.
this other fruit stuff you can
That's
get.
why she didn't live Central Tree. I can't believe she lived Central Tree. She lived
Right.
West Coast of the tree.
I would have been living on that edge
She lived West
because
Coast.
you're nowhere you're nowhere near the middle.
Nowhere near.
The only tree that I can't eat is in the middle. Oh,
I'm
I'm gonna live
somewhere
on
else.
the edge.
Right.
I'm gonna walk that fence the entire life.
When you set up a home shop, it moving, going to traversing too far away from that is not.
Because you gotta
something
go
to-
back. You gotta
Because
go back.
there's no accommodation where you're going. You don't know where you're gonna meet. You don't have
There's no
anything.
It's perfect.
It's not only that, Kenrick. You gotta go
never
back.
had rain.
You gotta go back.
back. You
My
gotta
thing
go
is,
back.
if you go 5 miles left, you gotta come back 5 miles right to go back home.
And if you go 20 miles the next day,
If it's
by the time you get to
perfect.
100 miles, you're not coming back 100 miles.
So
And then
animals-
going again, another
Were animals
200.
killing each other?
What?
Were animals killing each other?
I'm just saying, if you move
They
200
knew no
miles away,
violence.
you're going to
Every
set up
place is
200
safe.
miles away. You're not going back.
That's a good question. My
place is
father-in-law was just asking me that.
What?
Were they eating each other? Yet?
Were they
They
what?
had to have. They had to have
What?
it.
Who?
Yeah.
You can't have death. How was it death?
Wait, so that's a whole nother question.
Bum, bum, bum.
That's a
Was
whole
there
nother
decay?
question.
I missed the
I
I don't
question.
know.
I-
No.
Yeah.
They weren't all
I
just
missed
eating
the
the plants, and the plants had
The
like
animals,
so
were they,
somebody was
when did they
dying.
start to eat each other?
Plants was eating each other. I mean, they eating plants. Plants have
When
life,
sin came.
so there's some level of death going on here, folks.
Yeah, the plan was for them to eat fruits.
Yeah,
Eat
but
the
the fruit,
they died.
Unlimited mango.
the
just,
tree's still dying. There's
Ah.
still level of death here.
Yeah, death at the beginning.
Yeah.
Just by the diet, there's death.
Yeah. Period. Just by your
What?
diet, there's death. Like eating fruits, you're killing
Or life.
trees.
Yes, there's life for me by eating the fruit that dies.
Right.
The fruit
But
is
then that
no
fruit
longer
goes
alive.
through- That fruit goes through you and provides life.
My guy, what are you doing?
And
Yeah,
then you drop it off,
And then you
and it
chuck the
provides
seed.
more life.
yes, but it dies in the process. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It has
No.
to.
So
it takes
I-
off.
so
It's
Cliff-
removed from its life source. It's dead.
So Cliff, I'm with you.
You mean now? You
I
mean
mean,
now?
if you pick a fruit, even in creation, if you pick a fruit, that fruit is not going to live forever. If you took the fruit off and put it down, it will rot.
Right. It dies.
Yes and no.
Folks, please drop your
Says
thoughts
who?
in the chat. We're not doing
So,
this.
Cliff, let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's do this. The only reason Adam and Eve lived forever would have lived forever as long as they had access to the tree of life.
Correct.
When they stopped
Correct.
having access to the tree of life, they eventually died.
Correct.
When you break
Correct.
from the source of life, the thing dies. Fruits
Anything.
are not designed to live
I got
Forever. They're not.
By design, they're not.
you. Said what?
Yes.
Fruit?
Because in order to get more fruit, you have
to release
the seed
these.
has to get buried.
Yeah, you have to release
Correct.
these.
That's my point. So the way we look at death, I wasn't looking at death in that.
In or out of Eden?
Either way.
Or out of
In.
Because
But-
the Bible says when he made the plants, he brought seed-bearing fruit.
Correct.
Mhm.
Seeds is where the life
Correct.
is. In order for you to get the seed, one has to die to cultivate the seed.
Correct. To keep it going.
Whatever, Courtney. Whatever, Courtney. I'm not dealing with this, dude.
I'm just saying
Can you
there may not
cut
have been the death of human beings before sin, but death,
So you're
death
saying
as a phenomenon
so you're
existed.
saying that they
Cut
consume
Courtney's feet.
you're saying they consume the fruit from the tree of life as source to sustain their life. They defecated the seeds out and then they planted the seeds for new trees.
No, yes, that's my point. So that's my overall point, not Courtney's point. But it's my overall point. My overall point is what you just said. And it's the way we view death. I don't think they necessarily died because they were still providing life. And then as you defecated it out, it provided more life.
Absolutely. But it was still dead.
It still lost that part of the tree.
In or out of
in,
Eden?
out. It don't matter.
In.
It could be considered pruning.
So when they ate the fruit, they defecated it. In
Yes.
Eden.
Let's say they didn't eat the fruit. And
But it was
fell
a
off the tree
perfect. It
because
was
of
a
the ripe.
perfect defecation. Like that joint was, the joint
It had to
fertilized.
be.
The joint was fertilizer
It had to
potpourri.
be.
Like it was.
It was it.
Because if it was perfect, then when they ate it, only the seeds came out.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes that happens to us.
Or who's eating or swallowing a mango seed and defecating that? Who's doing that? You?
Well,
You go swallow a mango seed and defecate that?
no, but
You're not even following a mango seed. Let's start there.
Nobody's swallowing a mango seed. So what happens to the seed after they consume the mango in
It's
perfect
not
season?
you, funny girl.
They dash it.
They pile them over on the sides and they plant them like they supposed to. They eat the fruit, they take the seed out, throw it on the side.
They ain't pile up
they
on the side.
plant
They
it.
never saw the side.
They on the West Coast.
They never saw the side.
Ah,
All right.
All right.
I'm just saying, yeah, death was in the
Death as we know it,
Yeah.
or the negative connotation that we put.
In or out of Eden.
How many times we gonna say that, Cliff?
I'm just trying to
So
say,
there's
I'm trying
and
to
then
wrap my
there's
head
death
around
of
the
humans.
concept of death
So there's
in
death
Eden.
as a phenomenon, a thing that's no longer alive. And then there's the death of humans. The death of humans was introduced by sin because by sinning, God had to deny them access to the tree of life.
The death of
Otherwise-
animals was already existing.
Otherwise, they would have sinned and lived forever.
That's why they got cut off.
Sin is a consequence of death because they were denied access to the tree of life, not because sin brought death to them. They could have existed in sin as
Forever.
immortals if they had access to the tree of life. And that's what God says in Genesis 3.
So then the tree of life gives
Correct.
Yes.
life. So then
Not
how
God.
is there death? How is there death in the place
Because
where there's life?
if you don't have access to this tree, eventually you're going to die.
And,
I get that point. I get
in
that
order
point.
to
But
sustain
inside
life,
of
something in
perfectness,
order for a tree to give life, the fruit has to die for a new tree to come up to give life. Death is part of the cycle of life, at least where plants are concerned.
So death existed.
outside
Inside
of
of
Eden,
Eden,
outside
by
of Eden.
design.
Death. So the only thing that
I
didn't
just got- you
die
gotta show me where
inside
that's
of
at.
Eden were the humans.
What?
The only things that didn't die in Eden, inside of Eden, were the humans.
I would argue that if there were mosquitoes didn't live for 100 years.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So
I would argue that
if
cats and dogs weren't designed to live for 100 years either.
If the idea is that the only thing that gave life was the tree of life,
eternal life, ongoing, perpetual life, yes.
Correct. Then everything else that could not eat of the tree of life
would eventually die.
Recycling life. They were recycling.
Yes.
Yes. Just like humans are doing right now. Yes.
Got you. Reincarnation. Okay. I'm just kidding. It was a joke.
No.
It was a joke. It was a joke.
Yes.
Okay.
Humans.
So they put them out of Eden. So they put them out of Eden. They put everything
They
out
didn't
of
put
Eden.
everything out of Eden. They put the humans out of Eden.
Yes.
No, they didn't put the animals out of Eden. There's nothing in here that says that.
So where the animals
go? And where the animals go? They just died in Eden?
Eden didn't have a boundary. Eden didn't have a boundary, a fence that restricted the animal movement. So the animals may have wandered off, or there may be some that continued roaming around in there. We don't know. But animals move, the movement of animals.
Because
I'm just talking about how animals move. If animals were in the space, some of them probably walked away, and others of them may continue to live in the space.
East Coast. Some of them went
like
to
they
the
do
south.
in any place where animals live.
Did they put angels there to guard?
They were to guard the humans from accessing
getting
the
back
tree.
in.
So the animals could get through.
There was no restriction. There's no stated restriction on the animals in the scripture.
Okay.
To eat it. The only restriction that's stated in here is the restriction of humans.
And also, animals weren't dependent on the tree of life
for nourishment.
For nourishment, so there was no need for them to stay or
if there was no consequence to stay or go.
Huh?
Especially if they were smart, they should have stayed back in Eden because they wouldn't have got sacrificed. They wouldn't have got.
I would say this: there's no shark or whale or fish that had access to the tree of life at any point ever in creation.
There's no evidence of
you
that.
assume that sharks didn't swim only.
Sharks were not on land. Goodbye, Kenrick. They were not on land.
I'm trying to tell you, man.
You can limit your God. You ain't limit mine.
First of all, where the Garden of Eden is purported to have been is so far from any ocean that there's no fish that could have made it to eat from the tree of life.
Agreed.
I tell you,
there were fish there in Eden.
Perhaps there were rivers, so maybe there was a river. There was a river that ran through the middle of the garden. So
it had sharks and whales in it.
A whale in the river? What are we talking about right now? A whale?
How the whale could not happen?
A whale? Like a killer whale? Like
no, not a killer whale.
We have no idea what the rivers look like in Eden.
Can't eat from fruit trees on their own.
Yes.
That's impossible. By their anatomy, by their design, that's improbable, unlikely.
Okay.
We don't know.
Okay, guys.
Because in Eden, everything was perfect.
It was perfectly unavailable to them.
Listen. I just want to go on record. And saying there's some Greek philosophy going on here.
Bro, I'm looking at the maps now. Ain't no whales in these.
How not?
Guys, I'm getting off. I'm dying of nasal.
We're philosophizing right now. Watch out, man.
So God created fish and all these different fish and put them outside of Eden and wherever else.
Remember we talked about they were roaming.
Asking. Yeah,
they were roaming.
Fish were roaming?
No. Adam and Eve were roaming and stuff. So they went to go see the fish, the big ones.
They only stayed inside the garden.
Yeah, but we didn't tell you their limit to the garden. We don't know the limit to the garden.
We know the limits of the garden. They told me what the rivers were. They didn't say any other rivers.
Do you know how big that area is? I'm looking at it on the map right now. I think it's huge.
That's my point. But they weren't where New York City was.
It was definitely bigger than the Bronx. I ain't gonna hold you.
Bear in mind that God.
Yeah, but what we're seeing now is after the flood. So we have no idea.
Absolutely. But bear in mind, God's intent for men was to take over the whole earth.
Yeah.
So he didn't have to concentrate everything in one area.
Yeah.
He didn't have to. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. And the animals, they had the free reign to move and come and go as he instructed or he allowed.
Well, wait.
You can't name a shark when you don't see a shark. And if you never look,
there you go. There you go.
Hey, but he
brought
them
but
to
as
him.
we said, you just said they got bored and they was roaming. So she went to the West Coast, they went to the dirty dirt. And they went to the dirty, ran into the
river, or the Bama walked up there.
They walked up there. I'm okay with them walking up
or flew.
So verse 19 says,
the serpents were flying.
Verse 19 of chapter 2 says, the Lord had formed all the wild animals and all the birds of the sky. He made all of them out of the ground. He brought them to the man to see what names he would give them. Right? So the man, verse 20, gave names to all the livestock, all the birds of the sky, and all the wild animals. This does not include the fish that were created on the, what day was that? What day were the fish created?
Third day? Fifth day.
No. Yeah, like
it was the day before the live animals.
I thought it was fifth day. Fourth day is the sun, moon, and stars, whatever.
It was day 5.
Yeah.
The land animals were created the same day as man.
Correct.
Okay.
The fish and them were created the day before.
Correct.
And there's direct language to talk about the seas being filled with living things and the birds. It was the sea and the birds. The birds and the fish were made on day 5. The land animals were made on day 6. And according to this, he brought the land animals and the birds to the man. He didn't bring the fish.
Okay.
According to this.
So the fish named themselves. No, I'm just messing. I'm messing. I'm just messing.
Men encountered the fish. Because
then he named it.
Men did name the fish over time because that was part of their responsibilities. Man naming animals. Absolutely.
It was whatchamacallit. What's the dude that caught the big fish? The white whale?
The Moby Dick one?
Moby Dick.
You talking about what you call it? Moby Dick? That's what you're talking about?
Okay.
You talking about Moby Dick?
Time for takeaways. I'm gonna go first.
I can't wait, man. I can't right now. Give me a second. I got to get this last thought out of my head because so I can get me a takeaway.
First of all, the last 5 minutes of this conversation blew my mind.
So this person, Adam would not have been able to name the fish. I would say, I'm sure there were fish that Adam may have named because there was rivers running through the garden. Right? I'm sure that activity may have taken place. It's likely that activity may have taken place at some point while he was in the garden. The fish that were in the ocean, it is unlikely that he was able to do that. At least while he was in the garden.
Yeah. All right, that's fair.
No one ever thought about that.
Thought about
what we just talked about.
Yeah, people don't really give it any thought.
Hey,
you assume a lot of things.
I mean, I'm sure people thought about it, but it was probably usually after a
Oh, man.
I blame Cliff. I blame Cliff.
I was just trying to understand, man. I am not one to sit back and just gloss over. But wait a minute, hold up. I got to understand some things. Okay.
All right. I mean,
my
takeaway is something I got from the last end of the size of the garden. It's about how we view our perspectives, our worldview, our experience, the things that we've been able to see and hear and come into contact with, even with a wealth of expanse, is not nearly what God's is. And the Garden of Eden, and they're not realizing, hey, there's something beyond this that's not as nice as this, so let's not take this for granted. Ties right into that whole idea of trusting God's wisdom that Courtney read, but it did it for me in such a profound way in terms of what our perspective is, and then however big it could get, there's still more beyond that that God has that should lead us or incline us to trust Him more. So that garden illustration was profound for me. So that's my takeaway. Courtney, since this was your contribution, introduction,
Yes. Yeah.
how did you go next?
Okay. Again, I got a lot of light shed on that question originally about being not wise in our own eyes. I think I liked that tie-in, especially with First Samuel, because for me that was a good example where shows like where it's like God wants us to carefully like weigh the benefits against the problems. Because we can look at situations and as we all discussed, like from our limited knowledge, we could say, okay, we could solve this way. My idea, my perspective, this could work like this. But overall, I think we should trust God knows better than we do, and ultimately his ways should prove to be the ultimate benefit for us in the long term. And I think God just obviously he just knows more about uh, all of the ins and outs of every decision that we could make. So I took away that, man, I personally, and I think we all should trust God more than ourselves, and trust that His word and His wisdom will guide us to a place where we can just benefit the best.
Amen. How about you, Jerry? I know we did a lot of talking, and you were kind of quiet over there today.
I think I'm still with the consolidation of power, and thankful that it's not just one but three people in my corner, and that they have their own unique ways of instructing, guiding, comforting, bringing me through things. Because there are times when I think it's more of the father's role in situations, more of Jesus, my brother's role, and then more the spirit's role at times. And I'm appreciating more and more that connection and that diversity. Yeah.
Kenneth?
I think I landed with the idea God had originally, where He was sovereign, should dictate kind of how I operate within my own existence. Centralized power isn't within my under my authority isn't the way. And it's proven throughout history that it hasn't been the way to operate. So the original plan was best.
Word. Good. Yes.
Can you guys hear me? So mine's is I guess with Samuel and his two sons, and then coming back full circle to the garden. I'm going to say my takeaway is frustrations are self-inflicted. And when you deal in those emotions in that situations, your decisions can have generational curses. That's my takeaway.
I receive it. Hopefully the bishop comes and
That's deep, man.
Gives us a word. But we do have a takeaway from Mezzo. He says it ties in with the last few meetings with there being ideology, way of thinking, and being in order to be a part of the collective kingdom. How will the kingdom be? I like the concept of it being like a healthy family. Yeah, me too. And I love that God, in his communication, was intentional to describe, the relationships in terms of things like father and son, and husband and wife, and because those things have a different kind of connotation than master and slave and ruler and king. It's a different kind of dynamic. When your king is your father, yes, he's a king, but he's also your father. That is a different kind of. There's an emphasis on the relational nature of the interactions, than the impersonal transactional nature that happens in a more formal type of environment. So I love it too. So thank you for that, Mezzo. Bishop, we can hear it. We'll move on without anybody want to close us out in prayer. Or want to volunteer to close us out in prayer? So we all want to pray.
A volunteer, Kenrick.
Okay, I like that.
I'm volunteering.
I like that.
I'm from Tennessee, so I get it.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
It's a volunteer state.
Oh, that's what I mean. Okay, I didn't know that.
All right, let's pray. Dearly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for all of your blessings. We thank you for the opportunity to come and fellowship with one another and have conversations centralized around you. We ask that the things that were said and the thoughts that we had, we ask them that you please continue to let them marinate and continue to teach us and learn us in your way. We ask you to please bless all those that are here, all those that will hear this, bless the families that are represented, the desires and prayer requests that they may have. We ask you to continue to be with us, forgive us for our sins. And when you come back, take us all to heaven with you. Ask all those things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen, amen.
Amen.
So I have some not so good news. Not so good news is January has 5 Fridays, which means we are not back again until the first Friday in February, which is February 7th. So we're going to miss 2 weeks. The 21st, the 24th, and the 31st. So it's going to be a while before we get to connect like this again, but more material to cover and more good conversations to be had.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Just a reminder for those of you who may not be aware, there is a challenge with downloading the app from the Google Play Store. We're working to try and resolve that. Currently, you can get the PDF from the website, and you can download the app if you have an Apple device.
So downloading and not viewing it, correct?
You can view it on the website from the PDF, and you can download the app and the PDF as well. So you can download the app onto your phone, but you can also download the PDF from the website. So you can view it up there as well.
So just Google has the
just Google Play. Google
Okay.
Store, the Android store has a problem. Yeah.
Oh, the Christians.
All right, so we are going to be closing out January, which will be closing out Luke and Proverbs and Genesis into Exodus. By next time we come back, we should be in the second part of Luke, which is Acts and Exodus. And Henrik said this year he's going to read the Psalms. So starting in February, you have a month of warm-up, a few weeks of warm-up.
Psalms 1 or Psalm 1. Sorry, Daddy.
February
Psalm
1, Psalm 1. Until the next time, guys, drink up, think deeply. We'll see you. We out.
Peace.